I published a video a little over a week ago about my thoughts on Remnant 2, and I was pleasantly surprised with the overwhelming support that it got. And for me, it was 2,000 views, which is a ton, which was really, really cool, and I got a lot of really good comments in there. The comment I saw the most talked about the fact that I hadn't yet played enough of the game to truly experience and enjoy it, because at the time I was just entering into the second world. I wanted to give an update to that and talk a little bit about this specific area I'm in, and to give you guys some additional thoughts and some things to think about. So this area you're looking at here takes place in, for me, the third of 3 biomes. You will explore 3 different places in this world. Well, that's not entirely true. There's 3 kind of procedurally generated areas that are not the labyrinth, and then not the final area, that all have a very distinct aesthetic to them. There's one that's like a forest. There's one that is this desolate world with weird alien technology. And then there's this particular one here, which reminds me a lot of Bloodborne. Maybe like late 17, early 1800s England or London, with lots of cobblestone streets and wood structures and enemies attacking you. Dressed very properly, a lot of them wearing muskets and kind of older garb. And it's really, really, really cool. This specific area, Cotton's Kiln, is clearly undergoing some sort of siege, as many of the inhabitants have been burned alive, frozen in place, and the whole street and everything is on fire. And it is one of the most beautiful maps and one of the most beautiful areas ever. Unfortunately, my experience with my PlayStation 5 wasn't the perfect experience. It did struggle to maintain 60 frames a second quite often, which was unfortunate. Didn't necessarily ruin the experience for me because the aesthetics were just so gorgeous, but the performance was definitely hurting. I think it has a lot to do with all these smoke effects and fire effects and shadow effects, and lots of particles going on with enemies that burst into flame and explode and then create more shadows and more smoke and more fire. And it was definitely a lot for the console to handle. But I love the aesthetic of this, and it really just inspired me because it just makes me feel like I'm in such a different place. And I think that's what's so cool about Remnant, is you're going to jump from world to world to world, and they're vastly different structures and societies and problems, and you're just going to kind of navigate your way on through and do your thing. Thankfully, most problems can be solved with a gun, and in my case, a friendly dog who's going to be healing me and helping attack throughout this adventure, this about 14 or so minute experience. I did not have my second archetype yet. I'm still actually working on that. And I think one of my biggest frustrations with a game like Remnant is I understand the need for procedurally generated content, and I appreciate that. I love the idea that they included right off the bat during your playthrough a survival mode in addition to the adventure kind of like main mode. So you have 2 different ways to play. You have the main story that you're going to go through. The decisions you make affect the world around you. That allows you to progress through the story and complete it. There's also a kind of like free play mode where they'll reset the world and you can kind of try again and change the difficulty. The nice thing is all the progress doesn't impact one or the other, so you're not going to lose anything by going back and re-rolling a world. If you want to try it on a harder difficulty to get better pieces of gear, to find more trait points, to find harder bosses, to find new enemies altogether, you can do that, which is a lot of fun. And I really commend the game for giving you that right off the bat. Far too often, this type of content is gated from first to second playthrough, which requires you to kind of grind. But here, if you play and you immediately, like, you know what, I want to go back and do it again and do it differently, you absolutely can. And I really, really, really love that system. The problem I have with a system like that, though, is it does force you to play the same things over and over and over. And yes, there are new enemies, and yes, the challenge does increase, but I felt like as I was kind of dabbling into that mode and going back and re-exploring some of the older worlds that I had already experienced, it did feel kind of samey. And I understand that most of the worlds are structured very similarly. You have kind of like a main overhub area with 4 or 5 optional dungeons. Sometimes they're not so optional because you have to go in there and collect something like keys or some sort of item to progress in the main world. But there's a lot to see and do, and there's a lot of potential things that could happen. You may have certain structures or certain areas that don't even spawn in your playthrough that require you to go back and play again. So for that completionist perspective and the replayability perspective, I love it. But from somebody who doesn't want to make this their main forever game like me, with a massive backlog of tons and tons of other titles I want to get into, but still wanting to enjoy the experience of Remnant, it makes it difficult because I have to rely on guides for almost everything. I'm constantly looking stuff up online. Where do I find the summoner build? What are the other archetypes I can get? How do I find this piece of gear? How do I upgrade this? Because it doesn't really explain it to you. And a lot of times, like for me, I consider myself quite the adventurist. I like to check every little corner, every little nook and cranny. I break almost every single destroyable object because I'm looking for objects. Like additional money or pieces of treasure, or in this case, a lot of times there's hidden pathways and stuff that are not entirely made clear on the map, which is a ton of fun to do, by the way, to go around and find that. So I like to go through that. So to me, I think I play the game very differently than everybody else. So much so that I had previous comments of people saying they couldn't believe how long I spent in some of the side dungeons. And that's because I kept looking around and finding more treasures and finding more hidden things to do in side areas. And I really, really chewed through everything in a very meticulous way. So when it came time to upgrade and to buy new things and realizing that certain pieces of gear are required in order to get that next archetype or craft some sort of item or whatever it happened to be, I was unfortunately disappointed when I realized I didn't have the materials to do it. And that's one of my biggest frustrations. If a guy like me, who is, I don't know, I want to say I'm about 20 hours into my first playthrough, and I am still just working my way through the third of the 3 kind of random biomes, right? I'm just now starting. 20 hours in. I'm not a bad player. You've seen me play other games here. You've seen me do Call of Duty reviews and Halo reviews. I'm a good gamer. And that's not like I'm struggling and I can't beat it. It's just that's how meticulous I've been. So you can sense my disappointment when I'm ready to upgrade something and I can't because I don't have the materials, because my world didn't spawn the particular thing that I needed, or because I'm playing on the basic difficulty and I want to upgrade something but I need materials from a higher difficulty. It does kind of offset the experience a little bit, and I think that's the biggest disservice of this game. And I know a lot of you guys are going to say, get good, quit being a filthy casual, quit whining and complaining, just play the game and grind like everybody else and play through, the story 4 or 5 times or whatever you need to do in order to get all the gear, right? I get that, and I understand there's a sect of people who are, passionate about this. This is their forever game. They're doing constant guides and finding new Easter eggs and hidden things and treasures, and I love that, and that's great. That's a very healthy, generous thing that the studio did, and it fosters a phenomenal community. But the reality is most of the players are not that. It is a very, very small subset of players. And I can speak from experience because I'm still one of the guys who plays Halo Infinite every day. And that game has been kind of dead for a while. Maybe we'll see a resurgence in a while. It's hard to say, but I understand the passion of a community that can drive stuff, and that's cool. But I feel like looking forward, if there is a Remnant 3, and I know it's kind of silly to even talk about a Remnant 3 because this game hasn't even been out, I want to say like 5 months, but I'm already noticing that that is a major problem. It's going to require a lot more investment than I'm willing to give to get some of the more unique items. And I can tell you in a playthrough of a game like this, looking back at my level 1 character when I started the very first time and you get that crappy long gun and that really rusty pistol, to where I'm at now with a pretty tricked out coach gun and a special electricity based gun, I can tell you my playthrough and my gameplay is wildly different. The way I use my dog is wildly different than I did at the beginning. The healing item that I have, the special skills that I have, the trait points, I know I still have a lot that I'm sitting on because I don't know what to do with them quite yet, have definitely changed my gameplay. And it's clear that a game like this in multiple iterations is different. And I fully expect people who have an experience and have gotten into the final difficulty, like that nightmare difficulty or whatever you want to call it, like the hardest one that's even locked initially, right? Those people probably have weapons you've never seen, builds you've never seen, archetypes you've never seen, and they're playing a very different game than the one you're playing when you just start off. And I get it. There should be a system in place to reward players. There should be a system in place that allows you to change your build and really customize your character and find weapons and skills that really feel like they fit the way you want to play. However, I think you do a massive disservice to a large portion of the audience when you gate that stuff behind the systems and the way that Remnant has gated them now. That's not to say I don't think they need to be there. That's not to say that I won't play this game even after I beat the main story in a reduced capacity, because there's just too many other things I want to experience. What I'm saying is that it's frustrating to me that so much stuff is hidden. And in a perfect example, I just showed it there very briefly as I wrap up this video, taking out Gwendol the Unburnt, which was an awesome boss fight, by the way. Really, really cool boss fight. You saw it there briefly. When I unlocked my second archetype, I got my character to level, my hunter, or my handler to level 10, which meant that I'm now given the option to go do another thing. Well, guess what happens when I go to town? First of all, I don't remember who the guy is to do it. It turns out it's the dude Wallace, who's on a boat kind of on like one edge of the map. I did not even remember he was there, to be honest with you. I couldn't unlock anything. Everything that I had was locked. I didn't have enough crafting materials. I didn't have enough of the items, the kind of core selections that you had at the beginning, like the gunslinger, the handler. I don't even remember the knight, I think. Those weren't even available to unlock. So the game's like, hey, congratulations. You've you've done something. You've leveled up your character enough. It's now time to go off and play with this next type. I couldn't do it. And that's so frustrating. I think that really kind of sets that limitation for me of like, oh, we could have done this better. And that's what's frustrating. And now I have to go back and do more grinding to unlock something. Basically, I have a blank spot in my user interface, like, hey, insert fun thing here. But because I played the game, at a maybe slower pace than others, I am punished for that? That doesn't seem right. I hope that this is the kind of stuff that when the studio is thinking about either future DLC or a Remnant 3 or whatever the next iteration of this amazing franchise is, I hope they think and keep those things in mind, because it is kind of a buzzkill. That wraps up my thoughts on Remnant 2. I am still loving this game, but I wanted to be brutally honest with you guys because I think it's worth saying. Take care, and until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.